Chapter 7, Ancient Greece. Section 3, the city-state and democracy. A city-state, as we have talked before, is a political unit made up of a city and its surrounding lands. So if you're looking at the map here, you can see all these individual city-states here. Delphi, Corinth, Athens, Olympia, Sparta, Knossos. The Greek word for a city-state is called polis. Each city-state, or most city-states anyway, were small with fewer than 20,000 residents, which formed a close-knit community. The center of life was the agora, an open space where people came for business and public gatherings. So if we're looking at Athens in ancient times, you can see here in this picture that this is the agora. Here's all the public buildings right here, kind of forming like almost a circle. And people would come here to shop or to gossip and talk or do business. It all, in Athens anyway, it lied beneath a fortified hilltop called an acropolis. This is the Acropolis up here in Athens. On the top of the Acropolis in Athens, you have that famous structure called the Parthenon. Acropolis, if you were to translate that, we already talked about what polis means, which means city. But acro, at the first part here, means hill. So city on a hill. We're now going to talk about 5 different forms of government that were, in some ways, formed in Greece. Now, we've talked how each city-state is an independent entity. There was no country of Greece at this particular point. They were all independent city-states. So some of these city-states will do different types of governments. So one type of government you might find would be a monarchy. A monarchy is a form of government with a king or a queen with supreme power. Like you see here in the picture. There's a little kingy and a little queenie. A second form of government is called an aristocracy. An aristocracy is a government ruled by the upper class of society or by nobility. So it could be any number of people who are ruling, but it's mainly of the wealthy, the upper class, or nobility. England today, or Great Britain I should say, is sort of an aristocracy because they have different levels of royalty. Besides the king and queen, which would make it a monarchy, they also have princes and earls and duchesses and dukes. That would be an aristocracy. An oligarchy means rule by the few. So this is based on wealth and land ownership. So only a few people would be in charge of the government. Now Greece has its share of poor people, and poor people were not part of the government in Athens or any of the city-states, and oftentimes because they were treated so poorly, they rebelled. Now a wealthy person who had aspirations of, leadership and power, he might take advantage of the poor people by seeing their anger and asking them to support him as a leader, and he would go into the city and take it over. And with the poor people would think that that guy would be on their side and they would have a better life. Oftentimes that didn't really happen. But anyway, this guy who takes power illegally is called a tyrant. Someone who took power in an illegal way. Now the 5th type of government would be a democracy, but that all starts with individual people. A citizen is a person who is loyal to a country and who is entitled to protection by the government of that country. In Greece, that citizen is kind of limited to a certain group of people. You have an adult who is male, who owned land, and whose parents were free citizens. Those particular individuals could be citizens of Athens, or in any Greek city-state, really. Both upper and lower classes were considered citizens if they met the criteria, but the upper class had the more power. 2 leaders in Athens made gradual reforms in giving more people more power. It's Solon, who's right here, and Cleisthenes, who's right here. Solon, this guy, freed people who were enslaved because of debts. Because back in these days, if you owed money or had large debts, meaning you owe someone, and you couldn't pay it back, you were put in slavery. And so Solon freed those people, and he made a law that no citizen of Athens could ever be enslaved. He organized citizens into 4 classes, but allowed citizens to participate in the assembly and elect new leaders. Cleisthenes took power away from the nobles, and he organized all citizens into 10 different groups called tribes based on where they lived instead of wealth or family. So this is how he's getting more poorer people involved in the government. Tribes then would elect a military commander who would be in charge, and he also reformed the council, which helped the assembly govern. The assembly is kind of their governing body, if you will. It's where the representatives would go to govern. Cleisthenes created the Council of 500. So these are the 10 representatives from the 10 tribes that would come and make up the government. So the Council of 500 was made up of citizens from each of the tribes who served for a year. So when you're elected, you served a year in this council. It allowed for more citizens to participate in the government. And see, this is the early forms of what we now call democracy, a government in which the citizens make political decisions, either directly by serving themselves or electing representatives to serve for them. In Athens, only free adult males who were citizens could take part in the government. Women, slaves, and foreigners could not. Another thing that could happen in Greece is ostracism. Ostracism was when a member of the assembly thought someone was a threat to the city-state. Then the assembly could vote to send this person away in exile for 10 years. That's ostracism. Citizens had to serve in the military and serve on juries. That's the end.